been almost a year since Roe versus Wade was overturned, and now the law of the land is up in the air. As each state decides reproductive health care access, Connecticut's staying a sanctuary for abortion and birth control options. But could new federal legal drama and other states' choices impact Connecticut? And how are lawmakers responding? We're breaking it all down with one of the state capitol's most vocal advocates. But first, we're sitting down with Senate Republican leader Kevin Kelly. What will the GOP's legacy be this legislative session? Just halfway through, we're talking about the proposals they're prioritizing and the ones that have lost steam. Plus, how does their party feel the state's unprecedented rainy day fund should be spent? Good morning, and thanks for joining us on The Real Story. I'm Emma Wolforst. We're about halfway through the legislative session. Proposed laws are leaving committee and budget debates are underway. Joining me now this morning, Senate Republican leader Kevin Kelly. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, and good morning to you, too.
Yes, good morning. So as we said, about halfway through, what are those priorities that you feel are going well so far? What are the highlights? Anything you've been most excited about to see advance this session?
Well, sure. I mean, when you talk to any of the constituents that we just were before, as well as our neighbors and people in our communities, what they want to see is an affordable Connecticut. And so we're very pleased to see some of our initiatives, like reinsurance, to make health care more affordable. We have a plan that can reduce insurance premiums by 30%. That's $7,000 to the average family of four, $600 a month. That's real money. So we're very excited to see that move forward. It also includes, I'm going to say, small business and small group policies that are going to help employers reduce the cost of their insurance. As well, there's also a good initiative that's moved forward with regards to lowering our energy bills. But we'd like to see it go a little further than the majority, because there's a lot of decisions that the General Assembly has made, $300 million worth of decisions that go on our electric bills. And we believe that people should, on their electric bill, only pay for the electricity that they use, and that these policy choices really should be in the general fund. But these are two initiatives, both with health care, people know it's unaffordable, as well as energy. We need to do something to reduce those costs for middle-class Connecticut.
I know energy has been a big topic of conversation, and it might have gotten a little bit warmer this week, but during the winter, you were really pushing for more funding there with the cost of heating oil rising. So with that, what do you feel slipped through the cracks there? What more are you saying needs to be done?
Well, certainly with regards to the LIHEAP, which is the energy assistance, our state put $30 million into the program, but never changed the benefits. So people didn't get to access that money, and I warned the Senate on the day that we had that there's families in need, and that if we don't change the benefits, it's going to go unused. And that's really not fair to say we put money into something and then sweep it back. It's really almost like dangling a carrot, but not giving people an opportunity to participate. So that's something that I'm disappointed in the majority, and we could have done better.
So when it comes to money this session, we have this historic rainy day fund. It seems like everyone's trying to get a little bit of a piece of the pie, a little bite of that money this session. A lot of different priorities there. What are your priorities for the money? How do you think the Republican Party wants that to be spent?
Well, first, the rainy day fund is there because of the Connecticut Republican Party. Going back to the 2017-2018 legislature, the Republicans tied in the Senate. And among the various things we insisted on were fiscal guardrails. Okay, some of those were just extended from 5 years for another 5 years with an option for 5 more. But this all resulted in the rainy day fund being fully funded at a historic amount. So we're very happy that that's there. But what it needs to do is remain there and continue to be there for a rainy day. If the economy turns south, inflation continues to mount, then we may have to look at that. But right now, this enables us to spend down and because we've also made contributions towards our pension debt and liabilities, which then gives more money back to reduce the cost of government. So those were good things, and we want to make sure they stay there. But the budget, too, I mean, we want to see tax relief because, quite frankly, the taxpayers in the state of Connecticut have been overtaxed. There was an overcollection. The majority that we joined in last budget was $24 billion to run our state of Connecticut. They got about $27 billion in revenue. Now think about this if we went to a grocery store and bought a sandwich for $7 and handed the cashier 10. How would we feel if the cashier said, well, I'm going to keep the $3, or I might give you one back? Well, that's what's happening here is the state of Connecticut said we could build and run our state at $24 billion. They got 27. We really owe it to us to give back that money. And we gave the majority last spring an opportunity to do it at $1.2 billion, which would have been the largest tax cut in the state's history, and the majority voted no.
We've been talking about tax cuts a lot this session, the governor introducing a lot of different proposals, the income tax cut. I know we spoke right after the governor's budget proposal introduction earlier this year. Now a lot of those measures are working their way through the legislative session. It seemed like there was a lot of agreement from Republicans with the governor's budget proposal. What are some of the things you like there, and what are some of the things that you don't?
Okay, well, yes, we like the fact that they're going to extend the guardrails. Once again, those were our guardrails. Just like the income tax deduction, that was also our idea last spring when we gave them the $1.2 billion opportunity, and they voted no. So to hear the governor talk about an income tax cut, we like to hear that. Although he's starting it next fiscal year, and we would like to make it retroactive to this past January.
Do you think there's enough money to do that?
Absolutely. Okay, there's more than enough money to give that back because it's been over-collected, and this is basically putting back what was taken from the taxpayer in the first place. So we think that that's one area. I think we could also do more with regards to property tax relief, as well as a deduction for children. If you have a child, there should be an income tax deduction for anybody who has children. And if you have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, whatever you have, you should get. Maybe take the sales tax off kids' clothing. We like that. And to make sure that the working class also with an earned income tax credit, as well as that highway use truck tax. You know, anybody that goes to the store, whether you're buying eggs or milk, that was delivered. And the trucks that deliver those goods are being taxed. And that ends up in the cost of our groceries and goods and services. And so if we want to reduce the cost of living in Connecticut, you got to reduce the tax burdens that the government is putting on it.
Another big topic at the Capitol recently, and especially this past week, commutations. I know what was a routine vote to reappoint the former chairman of the state's Board of Pardons and Paroles kind of turned into a greater debate about this commutation policy in Connecticut. You've spoken out with your Senate Republican colleagues calling for a halt on all commutations. Some people say, you know, no commutations might be unreasonable. They're trying to further what they say is criminal justice reform. But why pausing? Why no commutations for you?
Well, I mean, look, over the past several years, the past 6, 7, 8 years, there may have been 1 or 2 commutations a year. And then last year, in 1 year, you went from 1 or 2 to 91. That's a substantial and significant increase, which included 44 murderers and other violent crimes. And so it wasn't that we wanted to stop the process, but we thought it was only reasonable and common sense to find out what this new policy was, because it was done to our exclusion. I know that myself and our ranking member on Judiciary didn't have access to this, although the majority yesterday or this week had mentioned that they did have information on it. And so that wasn't shared with us. And as a result, I think it's only reasonable to hit a pause. What unfortunately happened was after we not only had a press conference and the governor agreed with us to put a pause on this, the commission continued, the Board of Pardons and Paroles continued to commute sentences. And that's where we had to fall off with regards to the leadership on that commission, because it just wasn't the prudent thing to do.
Well, obviously, former Chairman Giles back on as a member, but the governor removed him as chairman. Lamont also speaking out and saying that he would get a group together to look into the policy and commenting that the legislature should weigh in, sort of agreeing with that position. Do you think that's enough of a statement for you? Are you confident that something will be done or the legislature will be included moving forward?
Well, you know, my concern is that we're just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I mean, the problem with what's gone on is that justice requires both sides, all sides, to have voice in the decision. It's how this all happened, whether it was the prosecutor or defending attorney. They all had a say in what happened initially. Now, exclusive of our judicial system, we have unelected bureaucrats making this decision, and the victims and their families are not given that voice. And that's really why we're standing with victims and making sure that we are advancing that voice, because they need to be part of this process. You can't have justice just listening to half the equation. You need all voices and understanding and tolerance in order to get to where we need to be. And that's really what's been lacking. So we're concerned that what the majority is doing is just putting the same people back on the same board in different seats and saying this is reform. I'm not so sure we're going to get there, particularly the fact that they knew about this policy. They, meaning the majority Democrats, knew about this policy. We didn't. And they've got the votes, so they're going to go do what they have to do. But it's more than just having a meeting. They need to hear these voices of victims in a meaningful way, in a meaningful time.
I want to do a quick look ahead with the couple minutes that we have left. Obviously, there's still some of the legislative session to go, but the 2024 elections are quickly approaching. They're creeping up on us here. So what would you say defines the Connecticut Republican Party right now with that lens of 2024?
Well, clearly what we're representing is the working and middle class families. We want to make Connecticut more affordable, and we have time and again shown a better way. The Democrats had $600 million of tax relief last year. We had $1.2 billion. They've had 10 years to deliver on affordable health care. We have a bill right now that will reduce premiums by 30%. That's $7,000 to the average family of four. Real money again. We have a plan to make sure that our electric bill, we pay for only electricity, nothing more. And so when we look at this, what we need to do is to make sure that when we make the investment of education dollars, that we get education results. In our cities, we have far too many kids passing along and only at a second or third grade level. That is taking hope and opportunity away from our youth and their future, and it damages and diminishes our economy. So we want to make sure that these things are got across the finish line and that we have accountability. You know, we got millions of dollars in COVID relief funds. Some of that was misappropriated. We had an OPM audit that showed about an 18 to 20% error rate. $300 million were lost potentially. So now we're getting federal reimbursement or federal infrastructure funding that we could put into our transportation system. This is good paying jobs for the trades. It's going to be good for our neighborhoods. It's going to be good for our economy. But it could also be targeted and make sure that it's accountable so that the initiatives are environmentally friendly and improve the air quality in our cities. I mean, these are things that the Connecticut Republicans are trying to get across the finish line. Unfortunately, there's not enough of us. And we need more Republicans in 24 to become, you know, I'd like to see us in the majority because I think we have a better way. Families wouldn't have to wait for affordable health care, you know, lower energy costs, better education, a better improvement in our economy, and better paying jobs.
And quickly, last thing here, there's a lot happening nationally, a lot of eyes on former President Donald Trump's arrest and that unprecedented moment in American history. Do you think that has any impact on the GOP's identity here in Connecticut? What's happening nationally?
Well, once again, what I'd like to do is focus on what we do here in Connecticut and moving forward. And when you look at what's coming up in 2024, what I really want to do is what I said initially is I want a president, a Republican president, who can serve 2 terms and be reelected again. President Trump has already served one term. I'd like to see somebody be able to do 2 more. That's what I'm working on, somebody who can identify what Connecticut is doing and how we can move our state forward, because the single-party rule that's running our state right now isn't working for the middle class, and we can do better.
As someone with an eye on Connecticut, I know that's something probably on both sides of the aisle lawmakers here would like to see happen down in D.C. Well, thank you so much again, Senator Kelly, as always, for taking the time.
You bet.
Well, we still have a lot coming up on The Real Story. We're checking in with Representative Matt Blumenthal on Connecticut's response to the most recent updates on reproductive health care. As a lawyer and lawmaker, what he can tell us about mifepristone and the future of abortion access in our state.